Aloha mai kako, everyone. My name is Moana McAdams. I'm the founder and host of the Moana Nui Podcast. I'm originally from the island of Kauai, but I now live out probably as far from Hawaii as you can be and still be part of the continent, and that's on the East Coast. And so I'm out here representing our Native Hawaiian community and trying to bring us together across borders, especially as our community continues to expand across the continent, as the challenges of living in our homeland continue to force a lot of us away from home. But we have wonderful tools that helps us to stay together. And so I'm really excited to bring you guys some wonderful guests tonight. So the first person I want to introduce you all to is Hailey Okomoto. Hailey was born and raised on the island of Kauai. After growing up in a Kanaka Maoli Japanese Filipino mixed race family, she has utilized academia to explore the intersection between her identities. Currently, her work is centered around reconceptualizing a community cultural wealth model through a Native Hawaiian lens. Haley is pursuing her master's degree in college student services administration at Oregon State University. At OSU, she is a graduate assistant for the University Exploratory Studies program, which consists of advising students who are intentionally exploring various academic and career pathways. She's also a council member of the Pacific Islander Student Alliance, located in Portland, Oregon. Outside of education, her hobbies include taking care of her plants, going on adventures near the ocean, and learning more about the Hawaiian moon calendar. So, welcome, Haley, to the show. We're so excited to have you. Next, we have Kumu Kui Gapero. Kui is a Hawaiian cultural historian. He's taught at Kamehameha School's Kapalama, worked as a cultural program specialist with the Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission, lectured at the University of Hawaii and Maui College, then settled into his position as a middle school educator at Kamehameha Schools, Maui. He studied at the University of Hawaii at Manoa and has a master's of Indigenous education from Arizona State University in Tempe. So, welcome, Kui. And last but not least, we have Tyler Pau, who is a proud Kanaka Maoli educator dedicated to the educational access and justice work. A first generation college student, Tyler holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Business Management and a master's degree in College Student Development. He served in higher education institutions around the continent, including work in California, Washington State, and Massachusetts for almost 20 years, focusing on residential programs, but always staying involved in campus diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. His most recent work has included partnerships with Summer Bridge, uh, Posse Foundation, and Academic Connections, serving underrepresented and underserved student populations. Most recently, he's returned to his home island of Oahu, where he serves at the Kamehameha School's Kapalama as the Vice President of Residential Life. Welcome, Tyler. Ikomomai. Awesome. So I'm so excited to have all of you on this show. You guys have such extensive backgrounds in education and not just in Hawaii, but also on the continent, helping our communities there as well as other underrepresented communities. And I really wanted to talk about education and have a panel focused on this because I really believe that education is the key to our liberation because we really need to understand, while it's foreign to us in a lot of our traditional ways of viewing the world, this is the world that we are operating in, and we need to learn to navigate it for the betterment of our community. So, it, in in my observations, living both in Hawaii and outside of Hawaii, there's like these perceptions that I've also seen about like people thinking that Hawaiians were lazy or stupid because we talk pidgin or you don't have to speak straight English, right? Like, and it doesn't mean that we're not educated. Like, I remember reading this article and they were talking about Hawaiians being lazy because like at noon they were out surfing. And I was like, yeah, because we was done with our work already. Like work smarter, not harder. So I think that's really important. And when it comes to education, I think a lot of the conversation is also acknowledging and exploring that it is a resource problem. It's not that our people or our community is not capable. We just don't have access to the same level of resources that is available to the majority community. So with that said, I want to go to the beginning from everybody, like a little bit of your educational pico, if we if we can say that. What inspired you to become an educator? We'll start with Tyler.
Ooh, this is a hard one to start with. Heavy hitters. Thank you for the invitation to be here to share Mana'o and to learn from everybody on this podcast. I think it started with some reflections in college, and so as a first generation college student, so it's the first in my family to go to or to finish college, and then to go away to attend college. So that was big, and then I met some administrators there that I think for me were people who weren't they didn't look like me. They didn't come from where I came from, but were invested in my success. And so I think seeing that impact and then some of the conversations that I was able to have there to process what it looked like becoming a minority when you were 18, like not having that experience until later in life and then experiencing that in a different way. And I had never left. I had gone to Maui and to Big Island. I'd never left Hawaii until going to college, like moving college, kind of like not even a college tour, not even anything. And so the people that I met there who were invested in me doing well, who had really, it had no cultural connection, no familial tie, but were people who were dedicated to making sure that I graduated, started to make me think about like, is there a way that I could do that for somebody else? And then is there a way that I could do that for somebody else who looked like me, who was from where I'm from, grew up like I grew up, who talked how I talk, all that kind of stuff. So that was the start of it. And then after graduation, yeah, pursued college student development because I saw how key that time was for me to be able to reflect on everything, like your identity. I went to Kamehameha schools and I understood like and this is my experience, or I'll name this for me, but what becomes like the performance of being Hawaiian, right? Or to be a Hawaiian student at the Hawaiian school. But I didn't know what that meant, right? Like what did it mean to be Hawaiian? And it was funny to be able to process that while I was away, right? When that identity became more salient, when it was like, well, what does that mean? Um, so yeah, I got really interested in that college age group, and then yeah, studied college student development, and then just went from there.
That's awesome because yeah, I had the same thing. I don't think I went out of Hawaii until I went to college too. Same thing, going in blind. But I went to Manoa, but then I did my master's degree when I was on the continent. But yeah, it was just very foreign and kind of just interesting. It's such transformational time, right? Like you're coming out of this period of being under your parents, and now you're like off by your own, and it's exciting, but it's also scary because it's like, oh, I gotta be responsible for myself now. And but I think it's wonderful that not only did you do it and do it successfully with the help of the people who were supportive of you, but that you also wanted to like acknowledge and give back to enable more people to come behind you so that they can be successful too. That's beautiful. Haley, how about you? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I listen to your story, Tyler, mine is pretty much the same thing as yours. Education has always been a part of my life ever since middle school. My parents talked to me about Kamehameha schools, applying there, going to school as a boarder. So I lived in the dorms since I was in 11th grade and then, or I was since I was 11 years old. And then it's a college preparatory school. So they prepare you to go into this next step of life. And I was also a first gen student, so I decided to go to Portland State University for my undergrad because it was a WUI school. But I didn't know anything about how my cultural identity was going to be impacted once I made that move from Hawaii to Oregon and to be in this predominantly white space, how that was going to make me feel. So when I got there, I joined this program that was for the retention of Asian and Pacific Islander students. And I really found my home in that space. And I really credit the program for me finishing college because I had a mentor, I had a Pacific Islander peer mentor who really guided me through the process of what is it like to be a PI woman here in Portland. So I continued with higher education specifically because I realized there was a lack of PI folks in the community. Like I could probably name all of the PI people at PSU like on one hand. That's how small the community was. So similar to you, Tyler, I wanted to be able to give back to these students because I recognize that we all seek that representation. We want that connection with one another. And if there's no one there to provide it, then our students are not going to make it through these educational systems because it's not built for them. It's not built by us. It wasn't built for us. So to be able to thrive in the space of higher education, it's really important to make your presence known so that people know there's a role model that I can look to. Like I have role models to follow after. So it's definitely difficult because you have to be like that sole representation on the campus and a lot of weight gets pulled onto your shoulders. But when you are reflecting with students, when you recognize how much they've grown and how much they've been able to develop their identity, then it's all worth it because you're able to see that you made an impact in someone's life.
Yeah, I love what you just said about making your presence known, even when you can only count them on on your hands. Like it's so important because especially our keiki, right? Like if they cannot see somebody who looks like them and see them be successful, then they don't think it's even accessible. It's hard for them to like elevate their mentality, think that like that is something that I can reach. And when you don't come out of an underrepresented community, like you take that for granted because everybody looks like you. Your people can do everything. Everything is possible for you. But that's not the experience for our communities, especially given the severe reduction of the Kanaka after the introduction of Westerners to Hawaii, right? Like, so we're like a minority in a minority. And so it's even more important for us to make our presence known and don't make yourself small, even though that's like kind of what you want to do sometime. So, Kumu Kui, how about you? What inspired you to be an educator and what like light your spark about it?
Oh, geez. Honestly, I didn't want to become an educator. Growing up from Maui, that I really had no plans of doing really anything after my life aside from joining the military. That's what I wanted. I went to Kamehameha school, same story as everybody else. Seventh grade boarding, couldn't wait to get into high school. And in high school, all us boys, we had to take JROTC, right? So I took ROTC. I went all 4 years, all throughout high school. I was the last commanding officer for the ROTC program before they shut down. I had my path set. I enlisted in the Army National Guard when I'm in my junior year in high school. So I set my path already. I was like, this is what I'm gonna do. My I don't want my family to pay for college. I'm gonna have the military to pay for college, go to school, and then pursue my dream job of being a dorm advisor. My dorm advisor, get to live on campus, take care of the boys, and that's it. That was it. Just be a role model and hang out with everybody, and that was it. Things didn't work out, and actually got deployed right after high school. Got deployed, got sent off to Iraq, and when I was in Iraq is actually where my shift happened. Noticing the local nationals over there, the people over there, the way the military was treating these people, it made me reflect on our history here in Hawaii. And so I was like, you know what? When I get back home, I'm done. I'm out of here, leaving the military, gonna change my focus to Hawaiian studies, Hawaiian language. And that knowledge needs to be shared. So that was my purpose. Actually, when I got deployed halfway across the world was when that shift happened for me. So as soon as I got out of college, I got hired at Kamehameha schools and I didn't know what I was doing. Right. And I remember, I reflected back on my younger days. Oh, what you can do with a Hawaiian language degree? You cannot do nothing but teach. And so when I graduated my Hawaiian language degree, that's the thought that I had in my head. I was like, shoots, I got this degree. All I can do is teach. I don't know. Nobody's hiring me. I'm fresh out of college, but Kamehameha gave me that opportunity. And as soon as I got in, I felt that it was the right place for me. Seeing young Hawaiians, seeing young Kanaka, eager to learn their language, eager to learn their culture, but also recognizing that there's a need for it. These young Kanaka are missing it, and there's a need for it. So credit to the military for changing my perspective to get out, come back, and teach our history and our culture.
Yeah, mahalo. Mahalo for your service, number one. Come from a big veteran family here too. So I know the challenges that places onto the Ohana, especially for going so far away. But I also resonate with you, like having the shift, not having that shift or that, maybe appreciation, at least in my case. It took me like leaving Hawaii to really like be grateful and like appreciate and have that gratitude, the attitude of gratitude. Because all the things that like make home home, you miss it when you're not there, and just really makes you reflect. Like, wow, look at all the stuff I took for granted. Like, what is the things that make our community and our island home special, and just really always feel drawn back to it. Right? Like, I may not be able to physically be there. Like, I think what I've heard from everybody is like finding your purpose and how does that connect back to your root there. So everybody has had some experience working with students in a variety of capacities. What do you guys think are the biggest opportunities and challenges that your students face? The ones that you work with, whether it's now or in the past, either is fine. I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Haley, let's go to you first.
Well, I am able to work with PI students in the capacity of our Pacific Islander Student Alliance Council. So this past year, we just had our annual conference, and it was really amazing to see PI students step into that leadership role. Our conference had been hybrid and virtual because of COVID for the past couple of years. So to go back to a multi-day conference and to have students from like Southern Oregon all the way up until Washington, and to see how happy these students were to be in this space, it was a really gratifying moment because they saw that they were able to show up as their true and authentic self. And like no one was going to question it. No one was going to microaggress them. No one was going to make them feel weird about who they were. We just all had this common understanding that we're all PI here. We're all part of the same community together. We're connected through Oceania. So it was nice to have that moment where they could let their guard down a little bit and just feel comfortable and safe and accepted in the space. So seeing them and watching them grow into those leadership roles is probably one of the biggest opportunities that they have. Challenges wise, on the other hand, some students just don't want to engage. And that's another thing that we're seeing. Like, I'm doing work with our Pacific Islander Association at OSU. And because of COVID, like students were not wanting to get involved with leadership positions and they were just sticking to themselves, being in these siloed spaces. And now, as we're starting to emerge to going back to being in person, I think there's not as much of a buy-in from students of wanting to reemerge into these spaces. Some people just want to do their own thing, but it's like a double-edged sword. Like some students really want to get back to leadership. Some students just don't care about it. Like don't even know if they want to continue with education. So I think those are like the biggest opportunity and challenge for the students that I'm seeing up here in Oregon.
Gotcha. Yeah. Do you have a sense for like what is causing them to disengage? Is it the fact that we had to be in isolation for so long, or are they even open to talking about that?
Yeah, I think it's getting them to recognize the value in being in these spaces
Mhm.
because for so long we've just been socialized to be like, okay, we got to separate, we got to be alone, like don't be too close to each other.
Yeah.
That has started to become the way that we're thinking. We're PI, like that's not what we're known for. We're known for being in community with each other all the time, 24/7. So trying to unlearn what we learned the past 2 years is hard because we're still trying to respect social boundaries and be conscious of health and how
Mhm.
COVID has impacted the PI community. So I think it's just trying to navigate this next phase of life that we're going into where we can be in community, we can be in space together, but we're also still cognizant of like people's boundaries with socialization now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tyler, how about you and your Hamana?
Can I speak to Haley's point too about the coming
Yeah.
together again? So I can still remember the first time I went to give ha to somebody after COVID restrictions. And it was like this weird, like slow-mo, like we had each other's arms and we was like, nah, can. When nobody was saying anything, but it was like, I feel like out of respect, I needed to, right? Like this was the elder, but it was like this weird, like, can we re-engage like this again? So just, I think even little things like that, like just proxemics and touch, that's so important, even in the way like you all lived in the hale here, right? Like we couldn't mix hale. Like, so you couldn't go visit other people in other dorms, and families were frustrated about it. We were upset about it. Like, but it was what kind of what the restrictions were doing. And so even now, as we started to open it back up again, it took a little bit for people to like re-engage or like share a bus or between Hale, and we're like, no, you're good now. You good. We can just be safe. You're like, but so I can see some of that too. I think there's a couple things I can think of. I'll speak about it in terms of the students that I was serving in higher ed in the continent. I think there was challenges around representation. There just wasn't a ton of Kanaka administrators or faculty to connect with. And so that difficulty in not seeing yourself. And then I think, well, I think we're going to get to this in other questions, but if you like, the system is strong already, right? The system for erasure is already strong. We can leave it unimpeded and it will continue to get stronger and continue to work. Like, so the people who were teaching the classes that my students were attending weren't choosing literature written by Kanaka authors, right? Indigenous authors, right? The bookshelves were full of, right, work from white men. And so like, and even to think about some of our fine arts folks, right? When they're looking at like the classics and those become the bars for like your performing majors, like it's all white, old white men that wrote that. And that becomes the bar for like, this is how we know that you're you're fluent in this, is that you can perform this piece or you can recite this piece. And so I think that representation, both in like what they could see and then who they would learn from, was a challenge, or continues to be a challenge really for students here or on the continent. And then I would think even here too, because what we use for measures for success and the way we talk about that kind of stuff, we use measures that don't necessarily speak to us or for us. And so that's a problem. I think resources, I saw that always an issue, the ability to afford education, especially on the continent, was just like a different conversation. And then with that tied in was like the systems. So there were all these scholarships, there were all these like this aid and this grant, but it was behind so many other gates that like if your parents hadn't attended, they didn't know who to ask, what form to fill out, what deadline to adhere to get that. And so even in working with like Posse Foundation, Summer Bridge, and Academic Connections, that was a lot of the work we were doing. We were working with like foster youth from South Central LA and Southeast San Diego. And just that wasn't a conversation, right? So the systems that were in place and this aid that existed felt like a myth to them, but it existed for the people who know the keys to unlock all the gates. So I see that as as a challenge. And I would say that that's for my students now too. It seems like such this far off like measure of higher education or post-secondary education that it feels like a myth. Like you can't access that. And it's like everybody who hits a lucky strike who gets to do that, not someone who's put in the work to kind of like learn the systems. I think that's the challenge piece. And then I think the opportunity, so I'll own the lack of humility that can come with something like this, but I talk this way to make sure that my students understand it. Also understanding that you preach best what you need to hear most. So I probably need to hear it too as a Hawaiian person, but we come from genius. You know what I mean? Like we come from like all these like cool efforts now that become co-opted, like restorative practices. And they're like, oh, that's from like Ho'oponopono stuff. Like, oh, cool that other people are catching on, but that's not new just because you want to put another label on it. Like, sustainable eating, like, or like in season, like, oh, wild. You mean like eat like in relationship with the land and never take more than you need and make sure that there is for other generations. That's not a new thing, but it gets co-opted that way a lot of times. And so helping our students understand that like they come from people who wrote those books, who wrote that story. And so I think that's been a big asset we've been trying to push towards students. And I can remember clearly a fourth grade teacher of mine, right, scolding us for speaking pidgin, right? Being like, don't speak like that. You sound unintelligent, right? Then seventh grade? Either seventh grade or ninth grade. And I remember my kumu, like, she didn't like grab my shirt, but I remember being like, you hold on to that, right? There's a reason that existed. that's an important tool. You hold that, like, okay, cool. Like, but to then think about, like, we were trying to be untaught tools and strategy and wisdom that sustained our people to survive and be measured in somebody else's world. And so I think that there's something to that piece to help our students remember, like, nah, speak that pidgin, right? I have the pleasure of working with the neighbor island kids, right? And so being able to work with, like, when you hear the different, like, slang from the different islands, right? Like, you can tell, you're like, oh, this guy from Maui, this guy guarantee from Maui, right? Oh, this guy's from Kona, this guy's from Kona. Like, and you start to see even in that, this, like, continued, I don't have another word than wisdom. Like, it's slick the way that they can talk to each other, and they can walk in and out of the slang, in and out of that, almost like a dialect with each other, that I want to remind them that they're from that. That's not, they're from genius. They're from, like, really, really smart people who thought hundreds of years ahead, right? Who were raising good kupuna, who became good kupuna, right? Like, that you come from that. And so I think that there's a hope in that. And so I think that that's a huge opportunity for them.
Mahalo for that. I love that because we did come from genius, and it's so important for us to remember that, because a lot of what we see now in pop culture is inspired by, like, indigenous peoples and practices. They're just appropriating it and making it like they invented it, right? Like, so, like, it's like, no, stand out there. And that's why for me too, like, my husband and I, we wanted to create, I used to have my children's book series, and my husband has his comic book series, and, like, really giving a more authentic storytelling to it, and not something that somebody's just trying to take and piece together to try and make something that's going to sell. Like, it's not going to sell with the indigenous people because we know the truth. So it's just something is just missing. But I love that perspective, the genius, because that's so important. Kui, what about you?
Yes, yeah, no, that's see, you guys spoke some good facts right there. But for me, for my age group of kids that I work with is middle school, and these students, they're still trying to figure out who they are, their identity, their own self. And coming off of COVID, right? This pandemic learning loss, it's real, it's true. But not only a learning loss, it's a sense of community that they lost, right? So they've been stuck in their homes for 2 years. Since I'm working with the sixth graders of fourth grade. Fourth grade, they're stuck in their homes, and they're not allowed to interact and mingle with their community. And so that is a challenge, having them come back. And when we release restrictions and whatnot, that was no problem. They could go with their friends, they mingle with their friends. That was no problem, right? There's no keeping them away from each other, but understanding how to work together, how to collaborate with each other, how to communicate with each other effectively, that is a challenge. And they already developed that culture, right? We've seen this in the past 2 years, kids checking out. We got a meeting class on Zoom. They don't show up to Zoom. They turn off their cameras. They check out. What are we going to do? We call the homes, we call the parents, and that's it. That's what it was like for 2 years, is really hard to connect with these students on a personal level. So we come back to school trying to get kids to focus, to collaborate, to communicate, to work, to even just turn in their homework. That's a challenge. That's a challenge. But also, why? And that's my question, is like, why are we pushing it so hard? Why are we trying to push these kids so hard to do this, to complete the work, to reach those standards right now, knowing that they have this pandemic learning loss? Like, why are we pushing it so hard? And this bothers me as a Kanaka, right? As we have this sense of community, this sense of collaboration, and we work together, we talk together, we learn with each other. But yet I'm forced to meet these test scores, right? To meet these test, get these kids to meet these test scores. And it's so far away from connecting with them. It's like, I'm sorry, bro, you got to do your work. You got to read this. You got to get here. Got to get here. And so it's a challenge. It really is a challenge. But also, in a sense, the opportunity that COVID presented was delivering education in a different way, providing these resources online. They can learn on their own. You don't necessarily have to learn in the classroom during that time, right? They're all YouTube learners. They're all generational learners. They want to learn something, look it up. So I changed my lessons. I changed my delivery to short 5-minute videos, no longer than 5 minutes throughout. This is the skill I want you to learn. Put it up on their learning management system. Here you go. This is it. Do this and you're good. Gives me more time in class to just connect with them on a human level. on a Kanaka level, do more things that are more cultural, right? Like, let's go ikalo today. Let's do this today. But does the institution recognize that as important or as valuable? Or you're wasting a lot of time doing this other kind of stuff, and you could be reading, you could be doing these other things. It's a challenge, right? There's an opportunity and challenge in everything. There's so much. You find a way to do something that's going to benefit this person, the human inside them, but also you're also having to face or explain why it's important. I don't like doing that. That's just me. I don't like having to explain why being Kanaka is important. And for our kids, like I said earlier, they're trying to figure out who they are, their sense of identity. And if they have been 2 years out connecting to their culture, this is the time to do it now. So that it's going to set them up when they get into high school, when they get up into to college levels, they know who they are. They can reflect on the genius of their kuna, right? So that's what I want to be doing right now is just really establishing that foundation. Is like, this is who you are. You can move forward. You can be successful in anything you like, anything, because your kuna did it and they did it better.
Yes, I love that. The foundation is so important. And really just taking in that, like what you said was that the students today, they have access to information, like they should be light years ahead of us, like because we didn't have those tools, right? Like they're learning even when they're not in school, to your point, right? Like, oh, what is that? Oh, I'm just gonna look them up real quick, Google. So I really like the approach that you're taking in terms of like spending the time connecting with with the students as a human, because I feel like that's, I don't know, just for us who didn't have access to the learning and all of the resources that are out there now, like we didn't have time to like connect like more closely with our kumu, our teachers, our even our parents, right? Like especially living in Hawaii when you have families who are struggling to live with the cost of living, like we don't always have a lot of time with our parents because they gotta go work, right? Like and so those community connections, we should be embracing them more and taking advantage of that now. But to the point of the system, like that's the thing, right? Like here we gotta go matching this like outdated system that is not even our system, right? Like what the hell is this? Like, okay. What does, and then I think about like these diplomas and all these things. I'm like, okay, so all that piece of paper, that pala, all they're telling me is I know how to operate in the white man's world, right? Like that's all it is. But that's not the only world that I need to operate in, right? Like it's more important for me as a holistic person to understand everything else that makes me who I am. And so mahalo for bringing that, even though it's like not in alignment with the status quo, because we need to push those boundaries and really question like our tools and our technology and our resources are evolving. So how are our educational institutions and expectations evolving with that? Like our students are evolving beyond us, like quite frankly. So like how do we continue to perpetuate that and like really empower them to embrace all of the wonderful learning mechanisms that they have available to them now? Mahalo. Let's see, where should we go next? Okay, so we talked a little bit about education in the school. Let's talk about how important it is to Kanaka for them to have their education start at home, right? And for our community, like we start learning in the home from our kupuna, whether it's the grandparents or the parents, multiple generations, right? Like because of the nature of our communities, whether it's the close knit ties or the economic challenges that keeps us in multi-generational homes and everybody is close that way. But what happens for as the cost of living and some of the economic factors that force our families outside of Hawaii? What happens to those family and those youth who have to move to the continent, right? And don't have the proximity to those relatives as readily available. Like what are some of those implications? And then how does the Ohana need to shift and pivot to ensure that our keiki are still receiving those cultural practices as part of their education and maintaining their identity through their education? Kui, I'm going to start with you on that one.
This is a tough question, right? I was never put in that situation. The furthest from it was me leaving Maui to go to Oahu, right? As a border. And then from there getting shipped off to the desert. But I already had those foundations when I was young. So my father's side, well, here or on Maui, my grandparents passed away. So all I had was my dad, my mom, and my aunties and uncles and whatnot. But just thinking about it today and our children today, the home situations maybe got a little bit worse, whereas parents got to work more. Kids are at home by themselves. They're playing with their neighbors and whatnot. We would ride our bikes to our neighbor's house all the time. But thinking about it now, how much time do they actually have to connect with their makua, their kuna? So not only here in Hawaii, where we have access maybe to other family members, I can only think and I couldn't imagine for those Kanaka who are forced to move to the continent and don't have that quality access to their own immediate ohana because they're working. Who do they connect with? Do they start connecting with whatever cultures are there? I don't know, but fortunately with social media, with Zoom, with all of these things we can. And I do work with TikTok and Instagram and I call it Insta Spam and Tiki Taki, Facebook, whatever it is. Students love it, but connect with it that way. And I've heard from many Kanaka in the continent, they're thanking me. They're reaching out. They're thanking me for providing these resources so that they can connect. They can continue. They can share these things with their kids. And I see that as a kuleana now. And as much as I heard that, I was like, okay, you know what? This for you guys, I'm going to do it because it is my kuleana as an educator, not to just educate my kids in the classroom, but Kanaka, period. Or Lahui deserve it. So as far as the challenges now, I totally understand, but I'll do what I can to reach out and help whoever I can. That's the lesson that I try to teach my kids. Like, help out your community, right? We all ohana, help each other. That's our superpower, right? Aloha spirit. Yeah.
I love it. Aloha spirit as the superpower for sure. Yeah, like everybody doing a little bit is helpful, especially with the tools available. I did see a couple of your 5-minute videos and I was like, oh my God, this is hilarious. I love this. And sometimes you gotta like break that mold to like attract the kiki because you gotta reach them where they're at. And this is if where your audience is, right? If the audience is your kiki, okay, where they stay, TikTok, all that stuff. So even though to us we're a little bit more elder, it's like, okay, we gotta adjust ourselves and just be like, okay, here we go. So mahalo to you and everybody else who makes our education accessible because even me, like I love it. Like every time I'm watching people back home, I'm like, oh, is it gonna be on Zoom? Like, is there gonna be a recording? Because I cannot come in person, but I'm so interested in learning more and always being that lifetime learner. So mahalo for that. Hailey, what about you?
Yeah, every now and then I'm able to work with Kanaka students who were born and raised in the diaspora. And it's really interesting to hear their stories because they feel connected to the islands, but in a different way. So, for example, right now I'm a TA for a professor who's teaching a class about food and ethnic identity. And she is a Tongan woman and she teaches through Indigenous pedagogy. So, these Kanaka students, they're learning from a PI woman and they're able to engage with higher education in a way that this is a transformational experience. I think, especially in Oregon, it's a really white state. So sometimes in their K through 12 education, they may not have any like Hawaiian or Pacific Islander teachers, maybe not even like staff members or administrators. So when they get to higher education, they find that one person who is PI, who is Hawaiian, they again, the role model thing, they see it as a way of like, I can learn from this person. I feel connected to them. So I've really seen higher ed as a transformative space for these students, especially when we're able to connect with them through very intentional ways that we can talk about identity, we can talk about culture, and it doesn't have to necessarily be in that classroom space. It can be just on campus somewhere. But then I would also say that having like a Hawaii club, having a Pacific Islanders club, it's another way to help students raised in the diaspora to get some of that like ancestral knowledge because sometimes the clubs are run by people who are born and raised in Hawaii, so they can share some of that knowledge and that experience that they grew up with. But in terms of ohana, making sure that cultural practices are available to their keiki, I think that community-based organizations are so important. Like with our conference that we just had, we brought in community-based organizations to talk about the work that they do, because sometimes we just don't know that they exist. So showing students that these are the resources that are available for you. Like, even though you're not in Hawaii, you can join a halau up here. Even though you're not in Hawaii, you can connect with PI communities, PI food, like art and music. And there's ways to do it in the diaspora. It's just a matter of like learning where they are and learning like what their resources are available to them. So yeah, I would say just learning the community, learning the space that you're in. Because when I first moved to Oregon, I didn't know there was a Hawaiian Civic Club in Oregon. I never would have thought that there was one. But in learning about the work that they do, I'm seeing that like the keiki that they work with, it's such a meaningful experience. And it's just a nice and happy space to be in, because again, we can exist as our whole and authentic selves.
Yeah, I love that. I agree that the community-based organizations are important, and we need to do a better job of helping each other learn about them. Because as I've connected with more people here on the East Coast, they're like, "Oh, have you heard of this?" I'm like, "Oh," I'm like, "What do they do?" "Oh, they do this and this, this." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know they existed." Like it's so important, especially the further you go away from Hawaii, the less of us there are, and usually only people only end up out here on the East Coast because of the military or government, or their family just ended up staying, and that's how it is. But yeah, having that connective tissue is so important. Tyler, what about you? Because you've engaged and worked both in Hawaii, on the West Coast, on the East Coast. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So this one hits close to home. So the states I listed as far like in the bio about places that I work is all where my Kiki were born. And so my daughter was born in Spokane, Washington. My son was born out of Worcester, Massachusetts. And then my baby was born in San Diego, in California. And so I think there is a big sense of kuleana for families who are having babies on the continent to continue to work to stay connected. Again, without speaking about it in like this, like, oh, it's kind of like mystic, but like erasure is a real thing, right? I meet educators today. I just presented at a conference in the fall, and we brought a group from KS, and it was some of the first Hawaiian people that they've never met a Hawaiian person. They were like, oh, so like Hawaiian person, like you grew up in Hawaii. I'm like, no, like Indigenous to Hawaii, right? Like it's like a different thing. Try to help people understand. And these are all educators, right? Other people presenting at a conference that are like, I don't get it. Like, is that like saying I'm Californian? And you're like, well, are you Indigenous to California? Because maybe, like, maybe. And so I think that the responsibility and the privilege, kuleana, is on the parent to continue to alter what the child digests, right? And so when we would come home, right, the nighttime books that we would buy would be either in Olelo or like Hawaiian stories that we would read to them to go to bed, right? Like when we would visit my family here, we would make it a point to get to the lo'i, to go to the fish pond, to go to places that felt connected culturally, but still felt intimate. Like it didn't feel like performative. It felt like that's something that I could do with my ohana that felt honest, felt genuine. That wasn't like, everybody look at, we're like doing the bingo card of Hawaiian culture activities. Not like that, but like stuff that we were like, nah, there's something to this, right? The pace that it makes you work at, the work itself, the connection to genealogy, like those kind of things, I think was really important for us, and super blessed because my wife is not from here. She's not Kanaka, but she understood the need to connect her kids to this, right? As someone else who's in education, who also was like, you might be the first Hawaiian person that I've met, right? Like, and then learning. And then I think also understanding the kuleana too, then to be a majority culture person who has mothered these Kanaka children, right? Like, so there's a responsibility, even if that's not connected to her, she has a responsibility to connect those kids to a history, to a lineage that regular education will not provide. Right? It was not just going to be offered up. It's not going to find yourself reflected in different things. Right? So when we were in San Diego and my daughter is they were doing a unit on Indigenous peoples, but they wanted local area nations to be done for research. So my wife was the one going to the teacher being like, she's Kanaka. Can she do her project on Native Hawaiian people? And teacher's like, yeah, sure. We haven't had that. But I think the investment, in finding the opportunity and then asking for the opportunity, maybe seeking those opportunities, I think is really important for the parents to do, to make sure that what they hear, what they read, what they see, what the parents talk about is aligned with those kind of things, right? Like this just happened. We took a bunch of our students to go see the Wind and Reckoning, right? Like super cool story, right? From memoirs of Pili, like, so things that they read about, right? That our students are reading about, but like, let's connect them with, like, now it's done in an artistic way, right? And something that they're not often going to go see a movie in like 90% Olelo and then like subtitled in English as easily, right? Like in the theaters. So we're like, oh, let's go do that, right? And so took students, and then I'm like, I'm also going to take my kids, right? Like that's important for them to connect to, too, right? Like, so I think just finding ways that you can take advantage of different opportunities to connect them to things, because it's not going to happen on its own.
Absolutely, 100% being proactive and creative about how we connect them to their culture. Super important, for sure. Okay, so wow, we're getting close to the end of the hour already. So let's see, maybe we'll end with this question. So we've talked about the different levels of education, right? Elementary, middle school, high school, college, and all of that. And one of the main goals of education is to find a good job and that can sustain your ohana, whether it's working within the community or even outside of it and making an impact in another way, sharing our culture and what makes us special, even in other spaces. So one of the things that, at least for me, in my work with the Asian Pacific American ARG or like employee resource group, I work in like mentoring and like trying to help with recruiting efforts. Um, but finding what they would consider qualified AAPI students can be challenging. I think mostly because they focus mostly on colleges and university and probably like the more well-known ones, right? But those may not house our community, right? Like there's probably only a subset of universities that you can find a good selection. We talked earlier about maybe there's only like 5 people in the university that would even um, constitute a candidate pool. So what should employers and companies do to build stronger relationships with our communities? Number one, the relationship part, because it's not just take. And then two, how can we better prepare our students to develop and advance in the workplace once they have completed their education? Haley, how about you?
One of the main things that I'm thinking about for building stronger relationships is providing opportunities for people to learn like the true history of Hawaii, because a lot of times they throw these parties and the theme is a luau, but realistically, they don't know how much harm that's impacting like people who are from Hawaii, people who are Native Hawaiian, because that's not what the true cultural practice is. So first is to remove all the racism from the workplace. That's like first and foremost, because that's the best place to start. But I also think that employers and companies need to value things beyond just that piece of paper, like we talked about. So, understanding lived experience and how that is just as valuable as an education, and that maybe someone doesn't have 3 to 5 years of experience, but they volunteered for like a community organization and they got experience in a different way. Or they grew up and they are Indigenous, and that in itself is a valuable experience. I also think it's important for employers to recognize like people for their holistic self. So our identities don't exist in siloed spaces. I'm not a woman and a Pacific Islander person separately. Like it's all together, it's all one. So that's important as well. And then for preparing students to develop and advance in the workplace, I always challenge my students to think very critically about like what they want and what they value in a workplace. So when we talk about things like professionalism, we really go into conversations about how professionalism traditionally is really rooted in white supremacy, and that these notions of like how your hair should look, how you should talk in the space, like that you don't have to adhere to those guidelines. You can still be who you are and still be deemed a professional. So just teaching them to stay true to themselves and not, they don't have to whitewash themselves to be accepted in this space. And if the workplace does expect them to whitewash themselves, to change who they are, to not bring their cultural identity into the workplace, and that's a sign like it's not a good place for you. You're not going to grow in there. You're just going to be suppressed, and that's not going to feel good. So, yeah.
My God, that's awesome advice. Awesome advice. I love the seeking the broader perspective and seeing the holistic person because that's absolutely critical. Let's see. Kumu Kui, how about you?
No. That Haley, that was beautiful. Thank you. Because I often say, right, educational institutions, learning spaces, shouldn't see themselves as this separate place of learning. It's rather than just they should be looking at as being an extension of the community that it serves. So, for example, a school on Maui here, it's serving Maui's community, right? So, it should be looking into Maui's community, those people within the community that are making impacts within the community, because these kids are looking at these people in the community rather than pulling somebody from wherever land and bringing them over here where someone that they cannot relate to. So, rather than acting as a separate place of learning, see themselves as an extension of the community that they serve. But then I also question, right? What makes a person qualified? Well, is the institution even qualified enough to have me? Right? That's what I'm looking at. Is like you said, right? If you're going to be continued or to be whitewashed or have to fit these certain agendas and things, then that's not the place that is right for me. So one thing that I appreciate right now, and I wish I had this opportunity when I was young, was internships, right? Getting out and working with the community. And for these students to gain experience, they should be working within the community. And our educational institutions have that kuleana. They should have this kuleana to get the kids out into the community, work with the community, and build that experience instead of sending them off to higher places of learning, college institutions, without having any experience at all. It's like, hey, good luck. You got your degree, good luck. That was my life. All I had was military experience. I didn't have anything else. But I look at these kids now, seniors right now in school, 2, 3 jobs these kids have, but they do it on their own. The school doesn't support them that way. These kids are doing it on their own. And I'm glad that they're taking the initiative, but the school should be looking at that, right? Helping the kids, helping our students develop this experience so that when they send them off into the world, they can go into the workforce with experience and get those jobs already. But yeah, that's Haley, you said it. Instead of separate places of learning, they are extensions of the community, right? Serve the community, do it justice.
Oh my goodness. You just asked like the $1,000,000 question. Like, is this institution qualified enough to have me? I love that. Maybe that's gonna be another panel. I love it. Like, let's flip this narrative, man. Like, are you good enough for me? Come on now. I love it. I love it. I love that perspective. But yeah, the internships are absolutely important. So valuable. I remember when I was in college, I was lucky enough to have one with the business school, working with a small accounting firm. And that was amazing. Like, yeah, so much networking and just a lot of value there too. Mahalo. Okay, Tyler, bring us home. What are your thoughts on this?
They covered it. They covered it already. I've done the same thing to Kumu Kui's point. Right? We do that with like when we work with seniors and they're doing college visits, right? I can tell you, admissions counselor, what my students would the value add would be to your institution. What is yours, right? Like, so what does your supports look like? I need to know your give me your graduation, your matriculation rates more than your admission rates. That's
Mm,
different, right? You want to be an Indigenous serving institution. What is the service? It's like not an Indigenous admitting institution. Like you can bring everybody in, start their loans, jack them up in debt, and then
mhm,
you cannot make it. Shoot, sorry, but you owe somebody money now. Like so I think I don't see that as like a prideful way, but a protective way that I feel
mhm,
like I'm obligated to do for my students, right? Like, so when students like schools are like, oh, we want to make a pipeline for some of your students. Like, okay, tell me what's the value add? Like, I don't want our people to feel like they have to operate out of desperation. And like we get this invite and like we're wooed with that, and then now they graduate, and then now they're in the hole now for eons, right, under this foot of debt. So we start there in the conversation. I think as far as people recruiting for students or for employees, I think they got to ask more questions than making statements, right? Come to learn and then observe, right? Come to learn, ask questions, and then listen. That lines up with like how we learn, right? Like from story and from Olelo and from Mo'olelo and from narrative and things like that, right? Learn from the experiences. To Hailey's work around cultural wealth, right? Funds of knowledge, acknowledge what these people bring to your organization as a school, as a place of business, and the value add there. Nothing has taught me more in all my time in education than like my visits to go visit our families out in Hana, right? To go and visit Kauai, to go into Kawela and Molokai when it's super bella, like when it's super hot and you're there. And like there's something to be said for like being on someone's aina and just doing regular stuff to learn from them. And so I think if organizations really want to be recruiting that way, they got to learn about who they serve from the place where those people are from. It's different. And then I think as far as helping prepare them for those places, uh, a little bit is unlearning some of the, like when we understand how to understand that as like, oh, don't talk, don't speak, like, I don't understand it that way. And then for my students, I want them to have a sane estimation of who they are, right? So super good at this stuff, say, can, like, be able to demonstrate, right? Show to Kumu Kui's point, right? I don't want to have to sit here and then tell you, like, defend why it's important to do Hawaiian things. But let me tell you about the impact that doing these Hawaiian things has had on my experience and the way that I understand the world and the way that I can relate to others, right? The way that I manage conflict, the way that I do my work, all those kind of things comes from that. And so I think like helping them understand, like, don't just shrink, like you were saying, Moana, like don't just shrink to shrink. That in and of itself is not like humility, right? Be sane about who you are and what you can do.
I love that. Going back to the cultural values of like what makes us great candidates for anything that we walk into is something that I've definitely pulled on in my career. Like a lot of the questions that they are asked in interviews, right? Like, or how do you manage conflict? What do you do to develop relationships? Like, how do you prioritize? Like, and dealing with a lot of it, I could just pull that from like being Kanasta. And living in Hawaii, we have communities from like various backgrounds, but we don't see them as like, oh, you Filipino over there. Like it's just somebody in our community and we all bring something unique to it. And we know what it's like to be like ocean locked, right? And so like that puts limitations on our communities from different aspects too. So we have to work together because we just escape. Like when we get hurricanes and storms that, these natural things that come to our communities, we cannot go run to another state, right? Like we just buckle down and weather the storm, right? Like, and the resiliency of our people in that way will definitely serve you well in the workplace because one of the things about being the majority and being part of that white supremacist culture is that like you're used to everything being handed to you on a silver platter. So like when the hard times do come, you see a lot of them buckle so fast. I just laugh. I'm like, that is nothing. What are you stressing about? Like people who come from these underrepresented communities, like that's reality for us. Like we navigate that on a regular basis. So I just love the out of the box thinking that on that kind of thread that we've been talking about in this conversation. And then just, of course, as always, like really leaning back into our people and our identity and our communities. So mahalo for all of your perspectives. This is such a vibe conversation, like such a wealth of knowledge. And I'm even sitting over here learning, like, oh, and so I was just like looking at things from a different perspective and just appreciating also the diversity of our experiences and the ways that we approach things, even though like I think for a lot of communities, it's also important that like not every Hawaiian thinks the same way. Like we have the same central values, but the way we approach something could be different, right? Like even for other communities of color, we're not token people, right? Like yes, we all have a common background, but we still have our own unique experiences, and it's important for us to share them. So mahalo nui for that. Okay, so we're definitely at the hour. We'll just do a quick round. Where can people connect with you guys online? Kumu Kui, tell us where we can find your 5-minute videos.
Instagram, Kumu Kui, Kumu_Kui. It's not easy to miss, or not, it's not hard to miss. My students find me. I'm like, that's not me. That's not me. Anyway. But I started posting stuff on YouTube. People have been asking about Hawaiian language lessons. I started doing things on YouTube, Instagram, Talk, Facebook. I'm all on there, and just reach out. I'm there. People ask me how much do I charge for lessons. I don't charge. That's my kuleana. I give back to the lahui. Everything I do is for us all. So there you go.
Mahalo. Hailey?
I'd say LinkedIn is probably the best way. Just my first and last name, Hailey Okomoto. If you message me, we can definitely connect through email, through Zoom, really whatever works well for folks.
Awesome. Mahalo. And Tyler?
Super old school. You just find me on email, Tyler Pau at Gmail. And every now and again, there'll be a small cameo on KS Border Nation. So it's the Instagram for the Hailey on campus. Every now and again, there'll be a small feature.
Nice. Yeah, he's not lying. I couldn't find a lot on him. I was like, bro, this guy is incognito. Well, but that's how you gotta be sometimes. Depending on like what field you're into. Sometimes the people know. But I'm so glad that Bree was able to help me connect with you, Tyler, at the last minute because one of our other panelists had to drop for unexpected conflict. So mahalo nui for being a part of this. Thank you so much for now being a part of the Moana Nui community. We look forward to having you guys engage and be a part of connect with us further. If there's things that you guys are working on and you guys need some help amplifying the voice of your efforts, please let us know. We would love to have you guys back. Bring your students back if there's topics that, like they want to talk about, and maybe we can do like some kind of student panel where they ask questions of a panel. I don't know. Like I'm open to all kinds of different ideas that address like the needs that, that they might have. So mahalo to everybody who is watching, whether it's on the live stream or on the replay. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope you guys got wonderful perspective from our panelists. If you enjoyed this content, please share it out. Like and subscribe. Moana Nui Podcast. We are on YouTube, Twitch, and all of the audio podcast platforms. And we stream live every Thursday evening at 7 and 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So with that said, on behalf of our panelists, myself, and Dana, who's usually with me, thank you guys so much for being a part of our wonderful lahui, our extended lahui. And we hope you guys enjoy the rest of Asian American Pacific Islander Month. And thank you guys for listening to our voices and hearing our stories. Take care, everybody. Malama pono, ahui ho.